Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a wine from one of the less well-known appellations of Bordeaux's right bank. This is Chateau Fontenil, and it's from the appellation of Fronsac. It's the 2020 vintage of that. The estate Chateau Fontenil was set up by two of probably Bordeaux's most influential, certainly most high-profile wine consultants, Dany and Michel Rolland. Evidently the two of them met as winemakers while studying at Bordeaux University. And during the 1980s, they actually created this chateau. Initially, they were looking to buy a house. They looked at the house and were interested in buying it, but then it was withdrawn from the market. However, they still bought the vines that surrounded it. They produced their first vintage in 1986, and they set about renovating the vineyard and the cellars. In 1990, they were able to buy the house. But it wasn't until 1999 that they'd completely finished all the renovations. What had attracted them to the vineyards was particularly a plot of old Merlot that predated 1950. The soils are quite varied, but predominantly are a clay over limestone, and they're on a south-facing hillside overlooking a little river called the Ile, and that runs north as a tributary of the Dordogne. And the Ile separates the appellation of Fronsac from the town of Liban and Pomerol, and beyond that Saint-Emilion. So we're to the west of Liban. Chateau Fontenil itself is in the town of Rollands, which is to the north of the Fronsac appellation. And the estate is about 10 hectares in total, of which a couple of hectares are leased. The estate makes three wines. There's this wine, which is the estate's principal wine. There's also a red called Le Défi, the Challenge, which is a premium wine made from one small plot of the vineyard. And then they have a hectare of white grapes, which is only entitled to be called Vin de France. So Le Blanc de Fontenil is only a Vin de France because it includes some Chardonnay, which is not a permitted variety at present for Bordeaux. So yes, they have 1 hectare of white grapes to produce that. And the Rollands have been quite experimental here. In fact, they got a bit of a ticking off from the INAO, the body that governs viticulture, for experiments they did laying plastic sheeting on the ground to encourage the water to run off and prevent too much water being taken up by the soils here. The name Fontenil comes from this old plot of Merlot that is the core of the wines. Originally it had been a plot named Filet Rouge, and somehow the name of the plot became Chateau Fontenil, and from that they got the name Chateau Fontenil. The wine is now 100% Merlot. Earlier vintages had about 10% of Cabernet Sauvignon in them, but that ceased to be the case after about 2014, I think. 2020 was really quite a classic vintage for this part of the world. There had been quite a balmy winter. It hadn't got particularly cold at all, and as a result there was an early bud burst. That was followed up by quite a wet spring and early summer through until August. There was rain, but that was necessary to refill the soil's water holding capacity. By mid-August the weather had turned dry, and actually by the end of the vintage the vines were under a little bit of water stress, and what's resulted in general has been quite rich, structured wines that have actually had relatively balanced acidity and seem to have the potential to age really well. The fruit here is entirely hand-picked. They refer to it being double sorted, so presumably in the vineyard and then on reaching the winery. Winemaking here goes on in small batches, so they're using small oak fermenters and small stainless steel tanks. Now, when I'm talking about small oak fermenters, I believe they're talking about sort of practically barrel fermenting this wine, so quite small quantities indeed. The estate says that it buys about 50% of its barrels new every year, and the entire of the wine, after fermentation and maceration, goes through malolactic conversion in new oak. That's French oak. I'm assuming that's 225 litre barriques. That would be normal for Bordeaux. And aging goes on for 18 months, again in oak, with about 30% of that oak being new oak and the balance being older second and third fill. So let's see what we make of the wine, shall we? There's quite a good depth of dark ruby red colour there. There are hints of purple red at the rim, not vibrantly purple, but there are hints of sort of a mauvey purple there. In terms of depth, I can just see through the wine, so it's not actually that deep or dark, but there's a reasonable amount of colour to it. The wine says it has 14.5% alcohol on its label there. When swirling it, yes, it's instantly throwing quite noticeable tears on the side of the glass. The aromas are rich and really quite classically plummy. But there's a slight earthy note to it. There might be a hint of cedar from oak as well. It's really the sort of the earthy notes. There's perhaps a touch of milkiness to it as well. So let's taste and see what we make of it. Instantly you see a wine with really good acidity, lovely freshness, and that's enlivening some lovely red fruit, sort of red plum, perhaps boysenberry, perhaps even a little bit of sort of slight raspberry notes there as well, sort of quite lifted red fruit. There's a velvety texture. The structure has some very fine tannins. They're slightly drying, but then behind that, the sort of the juicy, rounded, rich, velvety fruit is showing itself very nicely. The mid palate is smooth. It's a little bit warm. You're sort of tasting the alcohol there a bit, but that's helping to just peak up a little bit of sweet spice, tiny touch of cedar, perhaps a little bit of vanilla, perhaps also a little bit of cinnamon just coming into the finish. But then the wine sort of the fruit opens again on the finish, and you're getting this sort of quite juicy red fruit. It's again red plums, riper red plum, maybe heading towards red cherry, but for all of it there's a freshness. This is vibrant plum. It's not becoming sort of overripe prune notes, so there's a freshness that's giving the wine quite nice length as well. In terms of body, you have a medium to medium full bodied wine, and it is well structured. It's still relatively young, 2020, so that structure should soften out. I mean, it's already got quite a sort of chocolatey or cocoa note to the mid palate there, just overlaying the fruit. I mean, I suspect that's coming from the fact that the wine's undergone its malolactic conversion in barrel, but that's sort of quite typical of a clean, well-made, fruit-forward, modern claret. It's lovely and juicy. I mean, given its structure, it probably has the ability to age for another 7 or 8 years. I wouldn't think that the wine would tolerate particularly long aging, but why would you want to? It's accessible now. It's got some lovely, juicy primary fruit that I think makes a lovely drink now. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found the video of interest. If you've enjoyed the tasting, do please press the like button. If you think your friends are interested, do please share it with them. That would be fantastic. Do consider signing up and following us on YouTube. That would be fantastic to have your support. It would also be great to hear what you think about the wines, the tastings, or anything else surrounding them. So do please leave your comments in the box below. That would be great to hear from you. But most importantly, I do hope you'll make the time to join us for another tasting in the very near future. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.